I have not finished a book at all since seventh grade, and I know the English teachers that are watching this that I had, they're gonna be hating on me. They're gonna be like, "What do you mean you haven't finished a book since seventh grade?" Now hear me on this, okay? That does not mean I haven't read a book since seventh grade. Right? I've definitely read books, like the ones that were assigned to me in school and the ones outside of it. I have read books, but I just haven't finished any of them. That's all it is. And the last book I remember finishing was it was just like this like World War II book. I don't fully remember if it was nonfiction or fiction, but it's just like this book about how like eight guys are trapped out in the Pacific and they were just waiting for a rescue the entire time. That's like the vague plot. That's like all I really remember. And and here's the thing, like many of the books that I was assigned to in school and like the ones I've read outside of school, like for in school I've read Fahrenheit 451, I've read The Great Gatsby, I've read The Crucible in sophomore year, um, The Kite Runner, The Stranger, especially The Stranger in particular. That one I actually do want to read. I actually ideally would want to read. That's my first book, but I digress. But anyways, those are good. Those books are good. I actually enjoyed reading them. I read through like about like half of it, I would say, for majority of them. But I just like by the end of it, I was just or by the time I get to the halfway mark, I was just like I just don't want to read it. I'm just gonna look off SparkNotes. And you know it's I think for me the reason why I don't finish them is kind of like the reason why I don't finish like mini games. Like, 'cause, I play a lot of video games, and like for a lot of video games, I just don't, I don't, I stick through the beginning, I stick through the middle ish, and then when it gets to like the end game, I'm just bored, and I just like don't want to finish it. Even though I should, cause I might as well, right? It's like if you were cooking up a meal, right? And you were so close, right? Like you just had to add, spices, the finishing touches, all that stuff, and then you just gave up. It'd be like, what was the point of cooking it, right? What's the point of playing a game if you're not gonna finish it? What's the point of reading a book if you're not gonna finish it, right? So that's like one of the goals I want to have for summer. Is like I really do want to read a lot more, and then like I actually was like reading The Stranger a little bit on the way to my vacation trip, and I was interested. It was refreshing to read it again. After so long since I last read it in senior year, and I do want to read more, but when you have your phone with like Instagram Reels and all that stuff, like Instagram Reels, it's just constant laughs, constant giggle. You're just laughing the entire time, right? Like it's just pure dopamine after spike after spike, and like what like obviously logically you would want to read, right? But emotionally you're thinking like, oh, well, why would I want to read when I could just watch Instagram reels and just laugh, and find relatable memes in there? Why would I read a book that could be years old, decades old? It might not relate to me at all, right? But with reading, it is a form of entertainment. For me, it's not really that entertaining. Like I can see why it's entertaining, but for me, it's not really entertaining. For me, it's more of like I want to read so I can learn stuff, right? Whether it be through fiction, whether it be through nonfiction, I want to learn stuff. I want to like follow a plot, all that stuff, right? Because you know, like reading, it's interesting because like you can really like take a dive into like someone's mind, like the author's mind, based on the way they write. Not just based on the way they write, but how the characters are. If it's fiction, based on how they describe their lives. If it's like an autobiography, for example, there's really a lot of stuff you can dive into by reading, right? And I think there's like this like I don't remember how the quote exactly goes, but it was just like if if you can write good, you can read good, right? If you can read good, you can write good. I don't know how to like exactly the line goes, but something like that, where if you can develop your reading skills, you can better develop your writing skills because you can like learn from other authors, like how they write, what's your type of writing style and other stuff like that. And you know, it, like reading for me is just like the ability is me wanting to learn a lot. I want to see how I want to see different perspectives, right? Because reels, reels like you forget 'em, right? The thing about reading is that you generally remember the plot even after years. Like if you're reading a fiction book, for example, you remember the plot vaguely even after years, right? I still remember like vaguely like that World War II book, even though it's been like what 6 years since I last read it. Like it's been a very long time since I last read the book, but I still vaguely remember it because like reading, it kind of trains your mind for delayed gratification. with reels, with TikToks, with YouTube Shorts, or even just social media in general, right? It's just instant dopamine. But when you're scrolling through reels, like how many do you really remember? There might be a couple gems, right? There's surely a couple gems you really remember because they made you laugh so hard, or like it was like very, and some of them can actually be very informational. Do not get it twisted, but most of them, like 99% of them, you just forget it, right? When you read a book, you don't instantly forget the plot, or you don't instantly forget what they taught. You just don't. You really just don't, because it trains you to delay gratification, and to keep reading to the end game, to the final chapter, and then once you're done, you just kind of like reflect on it and think like, huh, is this fiction like good enough that I can learn from it and apply things to my life? Is this nonfiction good enough that I want to learn from this guy's story and apply it to my life? And I used to be, dude. And like the funny thing is, like I do remember reading like in 2020 when like everyone was online, bro. I engaged in like fandom culture, bro. I used to be reading them fanfics every fucking day, bro. Fucking, I had fucking Wattpad, I had Archive of Our Own. Like, dude, there's all that stuff out there, and I could read that shit. And some of it was, and a lot of it was pretty bad for the most part. I'm not gonna deny it. A lot of it was pretty bad. Some of them were actual gems though, and like I could legitimately I was amazed by it. I wanted to write my own stuff too, but it's funny because like that was like funnily enough, that could be the peak of my reading era, and maybe my writing era to a certain extent, although I wouldn't argue that, to be honest. But it's funny because like I think reading in school, I mean, again, plenty of the books that I've read in high school, they're actually good, and I do want to read them. But like I think for me, just the idea of being forced to read it, right? And like the thing is with school, they usually kind of like want to twist you to like think a certain way in like, oh, this, because like and some of the English teachers were chill. I had like one English teacher that I did not like personally, and she's probably not watching this one, so there's that. But anyways, like the school, they kind of wanted to diverge you to like think that like this thing is very important when maybe it's really not, or like this thing that is important is not as important, right? Like there's like there's a many memes, that like, I don't know, the English teacher will read the sky is blue, and then they'll overanalyze it, and to me it's just like to me it's just like there's things that are important, and then there's just something is like, it's just like, yeah, it just adds info to the character, or just adds info, or just adds background context, right? It's nothing like that deep. Like for me, there, like I said, there's stuff that's deep. There's stuff that it's very complex, and you want to reflect on it. But sometimes you just want to read. You just read like a sentence, or you read a chapter, and it's just like whatever, right? Like it doesn't matter that much in the grand scheme of things. And man, like I I don't know. I just want to read more. I really do want to read. Like that's one of my goals. Or I guess not goals, but like one of the habits I want to do for the summer is just I want to read more. And it doesn't even have to be that long for me. Like it could just be like 15 minutes, 20 minutes, or maybe just be like a chapter a day. I need to get like a bookmark so I can like save uh what page I'm on, because I don't have a bookmark. I just put like I put it in my notes app, but it's just not that effective. And also too, like sometimes I just forget. And so having a bookmark is easy. That's what I want to get to. I could just get like a piece of paper, honestly. It doesn't have to be like an actual bookmark. But reading is I don't find it entertaining. Like I said multiple times, I don't really find it like entertaining. Maybe if it's fiction, it could be entertaining in a sense, but I kind of read it just to like learn. Well, even if it's fiction, right? Fiction, you don't like necessarily like learn like you do with nonfiction, but you can still learn stuff, and learn people's way of thinking, people's way of writing, and all that stuff. And I don't know if I want to write more, like because like I don't even know what I would write, to be honest. But I certainly want to read more, and I want to be able to learn more about the world, learn more about the creativity and curiosity of it all, right? Because there's just so much to learn. And so that's really all I have to say.